Hello, Beyond the Mic Politics. Long time no see. It's been a while since Abby and I have been on your screens. As always, I'm Yaya,
And I'm Abby.
and we are super excited slash disappointed slash scared to be once again talking about the political state of the United States. We're going to be doing two topics today. First is going to be the very unfortunate shutting down of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and subsequently NPR and PBS. And then we're going to talk about something a little bit more abstract that I've been seeing. It's a topic I've been seeing circulating around social media for a while, and that's the memification of politics. And I think we have a Gen Z audience. What better topic to explore? So, firstly, let's talk about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I have their little address that they have that they put out August 1st. And they said that despite the extraordinary efforts of millions of Americans who called, wrote, and petitioned Congress to preserve federal funding for CPB, we now face the difficult reality of closing our operations. So I think this is the first thing that I want to get into because they mentioned like millions of Americans wanting to prevent this from happening. And I think it really shows the impact of closing down something like CPB. I keep getting that mixed up, and it also shows, I guess, the disconnect between the current like citizens of the US and our elected officials, because I don't think anybody would want something like PBS to be shut down. Like Arthur, what has Arthur done to anybody? So Abby, talk to me a little bit about your feelings on that.
I think it's insanely dangerous that we're having like the public broadcasting kind of shut down from millions of Americans. I mean, when you look at its original purpose, it was mainly to keep people informed based on public interest. So the shutting down of public broadcasting is insanely dangerous, especially to our democracy as it is. People This was created to serve the public interest, to make receiving information and news more accessible, providing high quality programming that informs and educates audiences and often entertains them as well. And oftentimes, well, this was mainly created to avoid that kind of like influence that different companies and their commercials can have on their audiences. When you look at all the programming that's been on there, when you look at specifically children's programming, you can see that a lot of it's foundational, whether that be they're educating them in math, English, or even just how to be as a citizen. When we look at like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, all those lessons of friendships and accepting people as they are and embracing other people's cultures, personalities, and different facets of themselves was a main point on there. Like even Mr. Rogers back in, I want to say the 90s, I was looking at a video. He was defending the funding of PBS, citing the impact that his show and other shows have on children. He recited this one like poem or song, and I was like, "Oh my God, if only people who are elected right now heard that today, they might understand, they might not. I don't know, maybe they need to hear as a kid." No, no shade, but like it's
You're in
just
the
it's
truth.
unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And I know personally growing up, like I remember like, those like small nuggets of those shows. And honestly, in hindsight, they've impacted my life. They have. And even when it comes to like the conversation of what do kids watch, there used to be the Disney and Nickelodeon debate. I was like, is there a third option for PBS Kids? That was what I grew up on. So it's heartbreaking to see that my kids in the future generations might not have that in this country. And then also it does have big implications on the freedom of our First Amendment and journalism in general. So it's really concerning. It really is.
It is. And I really want to emphasize the point that you made about how this is going to impact kids because, like, we see it all the time. Like, the children cannot read. The children cannot read. The children cannot do simple maths anymore. And it's things like Sesame Street that really help children, like, especially their really formative years, really retain that kind of stuff. It's not just about seeing, like, colorful puppets on a screen singing songs and bringing in celebrity guests or whatever. Like, this is really fundamental to children's development, and especially maybe people that are living in like low income areas and stuff like that. Maybe they can't afford cable, maybe the radio is all that they have. to receive this type of education, to receive this type of information that is, for me, the foundation of a working and healthy democracy. And literally, I always think about this, but like an uneducated population can never resist. So where does that start? That literally is starting from the generation after us, because now we've gone through our formative years. Like now we're in college, you and I graduated, we're about to go into the workforce and stuff like that. So it's like we already had that. But now for this new generation of kids that like they can't do anything basically, and they're watching freaking brain rot all day. I literally can't tell you the amount of times I've had to tell my cousins to turn off the TV or switch the channel because what they were watching was absolute nonsense. I tried to put my cousin onto Bubble Guppies one time, and she was being such a hater. First of all, she's like 9. She was being such a hater. She was like, "What is this? Like, what is this song even?" But meanwhile, she's watching YouTube videos about what would happen if Ronaldo was actually skinny and working on construction sites before and didn't become a world famous footballer. Like, what are we doing? Like, we're literally using recipes. And the fact that the Trump administration is so against like having this type of like institution in place, I think is really telling, because it's like, you don't want the kids to learn. You don't want the kids to be educated. You don't want the kids to have critical thinking skills so that when they get to our age and they start voting, they're going to vote for voters like you. That's what I think. It's really scary to
No,
me.
and kind of to go off of that, I mean, like, as you said, it's impacting the education of children. I mean, already we're seeing what the Department of Education being thrown in circles. I'm not gonna lie, I've had to take a break from the news because it's been so much. I see like the headlines I get from like my New York Times push notifications, but I've literally had to take a break. So like even for this, I had to do a little bit of a deep dive because I'm just
Okay.
like, I have to protect myself too. Like I have to protect myself. Putting me first. I'm not gonna lie. But
No one can
even
fault you for that.
and even going beyond like just kids, ready? The kids in rural areas, or better yet, just the rural population in general, they're already suffering with a lot of news deserts. I once drove through a town in Blair Mill County, which is like 30 minutes from Penn State. And I kid you not, as we were driving up the road, I see newspaper like firms just completely shuttered down. I don't see newspapers in any stands. You don't really see any of that. Most of their news comes from like the Altoona Mirror, which I think is the closest newspaper to them. So it really put into perspective for me what type of access, like, I mean, usually people in like more urban or suburban populations have versus rural areas. And to add insult to injury, sure you can get some information from the internet, but how about those rural areas that don't have sufficient broadband access? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Now they're at even more of a disparity without public broadcasting.
And I think that's such a great point. Like, because you bring up news deserts, and I think that's so important because now, like, when we talk about like the news, a lot of people think of like the big stations like MSNBC, think of CNN, we think of Fox and things like that, NBC, but those are not the news stations that are catering to rural areas, that are catering to those smaller towns. So the fact that this administration feels so comfortable with taking away funding that is directly impacting these smaller areas in terms of what they need to know and the access to information that they're having, I think is so scary, because information is power, like no matter what. And you brought up the internet too. And I think it's very scary, especially like with the rise of AI and stuff. Like for me, it feels like a lot of things on the internet now, a lot of people that are saying like they're like influencer journalists or like people putting out news and stuff, like a lot of people that do that, I think nowadays are acting in bad faith, especially with the use of AI. You can't tell real from fake anymore, which we should do a whole episode on that actually, because it's
Mm.
terrifying. And we've had some quite riveting discussions in the group chat. To our dear viewers, the group chat once in a while does blow up for about an hour, but it's like really scary. So you need trained journalists and trained professionals who are good at gathering information and then disseminating that information in a way that's accessible and digestible to people. We need those in those types of areas the most. And so shutting down something like NPR is going to be so detrimental. And it's really hypocritical for me, what that this is coming from somebody that says he's from the working class. We can tell that you don't want your constituents to be actually informed on what you're doing. Like, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, like there's no way somebody in their right mind can actually look and listen to what the president says on a daily even hourly basis, and think that this person is for the working class. Because if he was, or if he was a champion of democracy, if he was whatever, he would be the first to be upholding free press. It's literally in our First Amendment. Like, this president is literally going against the Constitution amendment by amendment, and we are watching it happen. We're literally watching it happen. It's literally so scary.
And I think this goes, it becomes more, I guess, partisan, bipartisan. I'm forgetting which definition is which. Um, but even like going into that, listen, your Second Amendment rights, they're not necessarily safe either. I get it. It seems like they are, but guess what? Once somebody takes an inch, they take another inch, they take another inch, then it becomes a foot, and then before you know it, you're at 2 miles. How'd
Right,
that happen?
right,
Slow
exactly,
and steady. Slow and steady wins the race, unfortunately.
exactly.
Like,
And he knows that, and Mr.
uh-huh.
47 knows that. He knows that. Oh my, because let's not forget the Second Amendment was put there in case of a tyrannical government. So when the government is
Mm.
becoming tyrannical, and you want to get your little AK-47 out to stop the National Guard from busting through your door, and then they're like, actually, you can't do that anymore. But hey, see, we're saying it now on Beyond the Mic politics, guys. The day the Second Amendment goes away, I want y'all to rewatch this episode because Abby Shashute called it. She called it.
I'm telling you, and then we could do a whole episode on the parallels between the state of Russia and the US's direction right now. I'm not going to dive too far into it, but I will say this. Listen, when Vladimir Putin was trying to do this, that, and the third with Russia, he used legal measures, he used economic power, and he really just exploited those powers to really make the country what he wanted it to be. It wasn't overnight. So for people that don't know the history of Russia, I implore you, please learn about it. Learn about how they got to where they are right now. Because guess what? When I look at the president and how he's shaking hands with a lot of these big companies and corporations, and all of a sudden a late night show gets canceled because of budget cuts. I want you to look and try to draw those parallels with critical thinking skills, please.
Please.
Because what's going on with CBS it really should concern you as well.
Exactly. And that is a great way to close out this topic. Let's get into